What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Threat Report Weekly, brought to you by Exact Cybersecurity and IT. I'm Brian, cybersecurity expert. This week, in today's video, we're going to start off with the Chinese hacking the US Treasury, what happened there, what's behind that. But we're going to talk about a bunch of other breaches and other cybersecurity news that you're going to want to be aware of, so you know what to do to protect yourself and what to look out for here in 2025. So let's get right into it. Our first story obviously is the hacking of the US Treasury by the Chinese. And there's some interesting little nuances and tidbits about this situation that you're going to want to know about and be made aware of, because quite frankly, this really wasn't anything that you can blame the Treasury for. They were unfortunately a victim of a kind of a supply chain type of breach that we see more and more common, especially with IT vendors and software vendors that have access and control to certain systems. And that's exactly what played out here with the US Treasury Department. Now, they did notify the Senate and other federal officials and authorities about this event, as they should have. But in early December, a vendor that they used named BeyondTrust detected some anomalous behavior with an unnamed software product that they produce. And in that investigation, not only did they release kind of like the rundown of what the vulnerability was and how it was being exploited, they also patched the vulnerability on the affected systems. In the follow-up to that event, they also followed up with their customers who had this particular software vulnerability and were impacted when they found out a hacker was able to take advantage of this vulnerability. And I'll go into what that vulnerability looks like here in a second, because it is interesting as well. But the bottom line is that BeyondTrust informed the U.S. Treasury that this happened, and of course, to the shock of the U.S. Treasury, they were like, WTF, and they booted the software out of their environment, even though BeyondTrust patched the system, which we see a lot with software and hardware when usually a problem is identified with it, or the organization that is purchasing it doesn't feel like they can trust that software or anymore. These types of things are usually what happens. Organizations make the decision to get rid of that technology until they can find something that's better or more secure, or BeyondTrust can regain that trust, no pun intended, from the US government and other organizations that are going to look at this and think twice about whether they should be using that program. We see it all the time when these hacks go down, that companies make the conscious decision to no longer do business with those organizations. So we'll see what happens here with this particular event and with BeyondTrust moving forward, and how this impacts them as a company, because it surely will, but we don't know how devastating it will be, if it could potentially impact their business negatively to where they would have to do something drastic, like merge with another company or sell or defend a class action lawsuit. All kinds of crazy things come out of these hacks these days, so you really just never know. So how did the hackers take advantage of this software? Well, unfortunately, these hackers took advantage of something that is pretty well known in the hacking community, for something that you can do fairly easily in most cases if you know what you're doing. And the best way I can describe this to you, which is known as token theft or token stealing, is imagine that we are friends and we have trust between one another, and I give you a code word or I give you a challenge coin. And every time I see you, before I share information with you, I want to know that you're actually you and you're not somebody who is pretending to be you. Whether I can see you in person or not, that doesn't really matter here, because I've given you something and you should have something that we both know, whether that be a password or some kind of a challenge coin or token, before I'm going to start conversating or having a conversation with you. And that's how it works with a lot of technology that you have in your pocket with your phones and your computers, especially if you do a lot of work from home and you have a secure environment. This type of transaction, so to speak, happens hundreds, if not thousands of times a day to people without their knowledge. Every time you log into a website and say, trust this device, you are creating this relationship. You are creating this token. And what cyber criminals know and what people like us know on this side of the fence where we're defending this stuff, we're looking for activity where somebody may be trying to steal or manipulate these trust tokens or these kind of code words, or a lot of times on computers these are just simple cookies, as crazy as that sounds. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of different ways you can achieve this using technology. There's really secure ways of doing it, and there's really insecure ways of doing it, like using cookies. But the bottom line is they're all susceptible to the same types of attack, and that's an attack that involves the theft of the token, and that can happen a few different ways, but mainly they happen through man-in-the-middle attacks, or somebody gains access to a system and they're able to steal the token that way. So in other words, think about it this way. You log into your Facebook every day without your password. You open up your phone, you click on Facebook, you click on Instagram, you log into your M365 or your Google email, and you're never asked for a password maybe but once every 30 days or so. So that means you have one of these tokens on your system, and one of these tokens could be stolen. And if it is stolen, then somebody can pretend they're you on another computer or another phone by doing something that's called impersonation in the hacking world. And when they do this impersonation, the system on the other side thinks it's you. So it would be like me walking up to you, looks like you, it sounds like you, and you have the code word that I shared with you privately. So then I start sharing information with you. And these are how these hacks go down. In the case of the US Treasury, this person from China was able to actually get onto systems and access those systems and the data and the software and all that stuff by using this vulnerability in this BeyondTrust software. So these types of vulnerabilities and hacks occur like this all the time through third parties. So don't think this is some kind of crazy sophisticated thing that people haven't seen before. This is really just a flaw of the technology that we use today, and really BeyondTrust not doing a good enough job securing the software and the product that they put out there that the U.S. government purchased from them. So we'll continue to keep you updated as we learn more, but because there was a lot of other news out there in the world today, this kind of got buried a little bit, but this is a big deal. It has gotten the attention of a lot of lawmakers, and I do believe that this particular incident will be another driving force here in 2025 for our U.S. government to turn up the heat and turn up the requirements that all businesses in the U.S. must start to do cybersecurity properly or face consequences. And it's going to start coming here this year in 2025, and businesses are going to be blindsided by it because it's going to becoming so quickly and so fast, because this stuff is happening at a rapid pace and our government does not like what they see. And speaking of governments, just a quick update from a story that I covered last week, or maybe last week or 2 weeks ago in our threat report from a few weeks ago. But Rhode Island and their RI Bridges system that was ransomware by cyber criminals. Those cyber criminals now, it's been about 2 weeks now that my memory serves me correct. They are now starting to release this information on the dark web, as I told you in the prior video that they would do if the state decided to not negotiate with this organization. So that is what is starting to happen for Rhode Island, and that is the update. They are still dealing with this ransomware event, but it has escalated a little bit in the recent days, where the cyber criminal group that has hit them, which is a group called Brain Cipher, they have started to leak documents this week from this ransomware event. So we'll keep you updated. We will let you know what happens, but you can learn a lot if you go check out my video on the Columbus ransomware attack and what that city experienced through their attack, and what we're seeing here with Rhode Island. While it started off to not be similar, it's starting to get a lot similar. So stay tuned. We'll keep you updated. And in another unfortunate ransomware event, we have this substance abuse treatment service, American Addiction Centers, where they have reported that 422,000 individuals have had their details exposed in a ransomware attack. So this is a Tennessee-based organization. It is on their website. They claim to be one of the largest substance abuse treatment organizations in the United States. And unfortunately, back in September, the Rhode ransomware group was able to penetrate their network, and over a 4-day period, they were able to steal this information. And I guess, negotiations must have broke down over the course of October, and in the middle of November, this group decided to start releasing the information on the dark web because this American Addiction Center decided to not pay the ransom. And we see a growing trend here with healthcare organizations not wanting to pay the ransom. And I know, paying the ransom, not paying the ransom is a major debate, but we see the ramifications when decisions like this are made, and companies are not fully aware of what comes down the pike when you make certain decisions like this. They're not fully informed. And we saw that mistake made with Lehigh Valley Health Network when their nude photographs of their cancer patients were posted on the dark web. That resulted in a class action lawsuit, which then resulted in the hospital probably paying 30 to 40 times more than what they would have paid if they just paid the ransom and dealt with the attack, rather than letting all of this private health information spill out onto the dark web and then have to defend the class action lawsuits, which their patients won. And the figure that was paid in the class action lawsuit does not include any government or regulatory fines that hospital is going to have to pay. And unfortunately for American Addiction Centers, they're going to follow basically the same path, because all of the information that was stolen from this organization was very sensitive information. We're talking about treatment and Social Security numbers, medical information, insurance information, all kinds of private information like where people live, where they were employed, home addresses, things like that. This was all stolen by this ransomware group, and then it was put on the dark web for sale. Now, like we usually see, a lot of this stuff gets put on the dark web for sale for millions of dollars, and it doesn't sell. And then what happens is they sell a portion of it to somebody who's willing to pay something for it. And this Rhode group claims that they sold about 10% of it, and then they spilled the rest of it, the other 90%. They just put it out on the dark web for free. And when that starts to happen, that's when the lawyers start to pore over the information, they start to look at it, and they start to contact the victims and get them into class action lawsuits. But that's not the only people who start to look at this stuff. There's other low-level criminals and scammers out there who steal identities and sell health insurance to illegals that live in this country. All kinds of other crimes come out as a result of this information being spilled over on the dark web, not to mention the fact that some of these patients could be contacted and themselves could be extorted and blackmailed because of this information. Because quite frankly, I mean, who wants it out there in the public that they were in a drug treatment facility? And if you're, say, a CEO or an executive or somebody in a high level position, you're not going to want that information to get out there. And these cyber criminals will use that to try to get paid in some way, shape, or form down the road with this information. So we'll keep you updated as things progress here, but that's the deal with this ransomware attack that happened in September for American addiction centers and the 422,000 plus patients' information that was stolen and spilled out on the dark web here in the last month. And in our next article, this is a little bit of a pivot for me in a video like this, but I want to kind of, this is our threat report. And in our threat reports, and what we do for our clients when we give threat intelligence reports is we look at a wide spectrum of threats that could happen to a business or an industry. And in this video, we're going to look at a new particular threat that is emerging. It's becoming kind of common, and I'm becoming a little bit concerned with the events that happened on January 1st, and then this article that comes out, and then other things that we're aware of from the past that have happened with our U.S. veterans and maybe some cyber criminal type activity. Things like this, where a U.S. Army soldier is now been recently charged over the alleged hacking of our presidential candidates' phone records, brings up an alarming new concern for a potential new threat, which is essentially homegrown cyber criminals that are turning on U.S. governments and U.S. businesses. This is another threat that we need to look at as cyber defenders as we're looking across the board at what could be attacking our networks and our clients, because typically we're looking for foreign adversaries in other countries, and we're not looking for particular activity that's based out of the U.S. And when you have things like this happening, you definitely have a problem where it could be U.S. based. So you need to be aware of these types of things and what potentially it could be happening to your network and from where and why. The other issue that I have with this is we do a lot of cybersecurity training, or we have a lot of people in IT that enlist or go into the military with the thought that we're going to get trained to be a cybersecurity person or a cybersecurity professional. And it's kind of happening at a high rate, I would say, that a lot of people enter the military with the thought that they're going to get into like the cyber command or something like that. And I don't know the details of how many people are actually getting into cyber command and things like that. So if you know and you have any insight on this, drop it in the comments, because I'm just bringing it to everyone's attention, because we typically think of cyber criminals as foreign people, and we would never think that a person who is hacking was somebody who was in our military at one point. But we're starting to see an alarming trend where it's going in that direction, unfortunately, at least for a small percentage of people who have been through the military and been trained somewhat or had some exposure to this kind of technology and what can be done with it. So I'm just going to leave it there and be as high level as possible. But take a look at this stuff, folks, and keep your eye on it, because it is going to be something that as a business or as a government, you need to keep your eye on, because this might be a potential threat moving forward as this evolves and changes this whole cybersecurity and cyber criminal landscape. And in our next threat report intelligence look, we have here the dozens of Chrome extensions hacked, exposing millions of users' data theft. Now, this isn't in itself a major story in terms of what I'm reading up on the screen, but the fact that we keep seeing Chrome be a favorite place for cyber criminals should be something that we're talking about moving into 2025. Educating people on the fact that your browser and the fact that these little things that you install that don't seem like a big deal, maybe a little thing up by the toolbar that shows you the weather, or maybe something that shows you your Facebook feed on the right-hand side. All these little extensions and things that you find that you feel like are convenient or make your life easier, you have to be aware that these particular tools are not innocent within themselves because they're inside of Chrome. There's a couple ways that these extensions become weaponized. One is that a cyber criminal builds an extension and puts it out there on the marketplace, and it has some kind of malicious code, or it's programmed to do something malicious. And unless security researchers find it or Google finds it and shuts it down, people can freely go out and download these kinds of things and install them on their browser without them really knowing that it's bad. They think it's doing something cool or fun or efficient or helping them in some way on their computer, when it's really just stealing information and sending it back to, some criminal or some state-sponsored organization. The other way that these extensions get weaponized is, somebody decides, I'm going to start developing Chrome extensions, and maybe they put 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or a dozen out there over time, and then they stop doing it, and they kind of just leave it out there. And then somebody comes along and figures out how to commandeer that extension and take it over. Now, I'm not going to get into how these extensions get taken over. That's another video for another time and another channel, quite frankly. But at the end of the day, these legitimate extensions can become compromised over time, and then they become weaponized, and malicious software or malicious code is embedded in them, and then they become something that is stealing information out of your browser, or even worse, allowing a cyber criminal to get some level of access to your device or your computer through something known as remote code execution. So Chrome in itself is not a bad tool. It's not a bad browser. It's one of the top browsers that is out there today. And it's fairly secure for the most part out of the box. It's when you start doing things, and this could be true for any browser. I'm not just picking on Chrome here. It just so happens that because Chrome's a popular browser, a lot of extensions could potentially fall victim to something like this, or you could fall victim to something like this because you installed an extension that had a problem. But any browser could fall victim to this. Chrome tends to be the most popular one because cyber criminals are constantly looking at how can I embed an extension into this browser and then take advantage of some vulnerability within the browser. You also have to remember that Chrome is installed on your system. So it has a certain level of access to resources on your system that that's already present that the extension would need in order to, successfully launch something like malware on your system. Chrome already has that. So if they can just get this extension in there easily, then they have an easy way to kind of get to a deeper level of your system. So the point of all this is just to let you know that these extensions and installing them in your browser are just like installing software, but it's a lot easier, and there's not as much security that gets checked, especially with the current security tools. A lot of it is like, hey, if you have Chrome, the security tool's not even going to check these extensions. I'm aware of a few security tools that can look at Chrome extensions, but for the most part, they don't, and it's kind of out of their league to look at this stuff. So it's important to know and important to be aware to really use vigilance when you download and install these extensions in Chrome. And if it's just something that just doesn't feel right, get rid of it. And these are kind of you can install the weather ones from reputable sources and things like that. But if something just doesn't look like a reputable publisher or doesn't look legit, just because it looks fun or cool, or it might let you do something on social media, just don't do it. It's probably a bad idea. These extensions can do a lot of damage. They can steal your information. So I would highly even recommend take the furthest step you can. And if you're going to use this kind of stuff in Chrome, do your banking and do your important stuff in another browser or on another computer where you're not doing this type of activity. That's the safest way that you can get around things like this, is just to make sure that your sensitive information is maybe done on, Firefox or Edge, and you don't have any extensions or anything installed on those browsers. And then you use Chrome for, the stuff that's less sensitive. Maybe your Google searches, if you're on social media and you just kind of scroll, then, maybe you want to do that on the browser that, is maybe a little less secure. So for any more tips and things like that, check out the resources in the description below. If you made it this far in the video, I appreciate you. Hit the like button, subscribe to our channel. Got a couple more things to talk about in today's video, so let's get into it. Saw this one and I found it interesting. So this TikToker, Gypsy Rose Blanchard, she had her TikTok hacked, and that's this kind of stuff that I'm talking about with these browser extensions. This is the kind of information that a hacker can get if you have something like a browser extension that is potentially exploited, and it's sending information like when you log into TikTok, what your username and password is, and maybe what your multi-factor authentication code is that you just put in, and somebody's sitting there on the other side getting that information in real time, and they can log in almost at the exact same time that you do and take over your account. And what these guys are doing, as you can see, the culprit wants money. Well, this particular hacker wanted $400 from this TikToker, and she's like, look, I don't have $400. And he's like, what do you mean you don't have $400? And she's like, look, I might have $400, but I don't have it right now, and I'm a mother with children, and I'm not giving you this $400. So chances are she's never getting her TikTok back, because this person has control of it, and the mechanisms and systems that are used to kind of get these things back, if you don't have things set up properly, like backup email addresses and backup phone numbers, and the hacker is able to commandeer your social media and your email account at the same time, you're in a lot of trouble, and it's going to be hard for you to get that back from these social media companies because of the way that they have things kind of set up. You're required to have all of these things in place because they're going to verify you through email, and if you don't have access to that email anymore, you're kind of up the creek without a paddle, and it's going to be really hard for you to get these accounts back. And when you don't pay the money to get these accounts back, they just sell them to somebody else on the dark web. Somebody else takes it over, and then they try to pretend they're you, and they try to trick your audience into thinking that they're like, a Bitcoin billionaire, and you should invest with them and give them money, or they're, putting pictures up of fake items that they have for sale. There's all kinds of scams that go along with people's social media accounts being stolen and hijacked. But at the end of the day, if you want to protect yourself from this kind of stuff, folks, don't intermingle your business. So if you are an entrepreneur and you use social media to make money, that's important. I would move that over to like the important browser with the banking and stuff, where you don't have the extensions installed, if you're paying attention from my last segment. But the other thing too is make sure you have your backups turned on in terms of backup emails, backup phone numbers, in case these kinds of things get taken over. But multi-factor authentication is really going to be the thing that saves your butt here, because if you have that code in place, it's really hard for them to steal that in real time unless they have things like buttoned up and they're really good at what they do. A lot of times they can't do that, so they just need the username and password. And if they can get the username and password and get in your TikTok and your email, and you don't have multi-factor on any of those, you're in a lot of trouble. So multi-factor is really important, and that's the one thing that you can do in 2025. Do it today. Make sure anything that's important to you has multi-factor authentication turned on, use an authenticator app, stop using SMS because it doesn't work anymore. Hackers can figure out how to get around that. Don't have an email sent to your email with a code. Use an authenticator app like a Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, or use a tool like Duo to manage your multi-factor authentication, because in today's day and age, those are the tools you need, not the old stuff. It doesn't work anymore. So this could be a big one, or this could be a big nothing burger, and we see this a lot in the hacking kind of world. But MetLife, a major insurance provider, has been accused by cyber criminals of not doing their network security very well, and they claim that they've breached the Latin American division of MetLife, and the group Ransom Hub leaked MetLife documents to corroborate their claims, and MetLife said, "No, not so fast. You didn't hack us. You actually, the intrusion pertains to a company owned by a subsidiary of MetLife." And we see this a lot, as I've mentioned. I remember that this happened several years ago with Apple. Apple, one of their partners got hacked, and the hacking group immediately came out and said, "Hey, we hacked Apple." And when the dust settled, everyone kind of found out that a third-party company that kind of made the plastic cases for MacBooks, they got hacked. And it was really one of the first attempts by a hacking group to try to extort or blackmail, a big company like Apple when one of their smaller partners got hit with a cyber attack. It didn't work. Apple told them to go pound sand, and quite frankly, it's been tried like 3 or 4 times since then. Most of the time when these bigger companies figure out that it's not them directly that was involved, they kind of get, the cyber criminals get told to go pound sand a lot of times. And that's kind of what's happening here with MetLife, where they get kind of thrown under the bus on the dark web and by these ransomware groups. Because again, these ransomware groups, a lot of times these guys are foreign, so they don't really fully understand what they have in front of them a lot of times. And it just takes maybe a few internet sleuths or the company themselves coming out to say like, hey, it wasn't us that you hacked. It was actually, this subsidiary or this company over here. This also happened not too long ago when hackers claimed they got the Federal Reserve, when they actually hit a troubled bank. And the reason that they thought they had the Federal Reserve is because there was all these documents on the network from the Federal Reserve, but it was a result of the fact that this bank was not doing so well, and the Federal Reserve was sending them a lot of documents at the time that the hackers got on the network. So they thought they had the feds, and they really did not. So same thing here. We'll keep you updated. We'll let you know if anything changes, but not uncommon for large companies to be drug into the mud when their smaller partners and vendors get hit. And the last one on the docket for today, folks. Appreciate you being here with me this week in our threat report. And Harley-Davidson, this is the second time I can recall that this company has had to deal with some kind of cyber attack. The first one was several years ago, but this company really has it tough lately. They're having a really hard time even selling these motorcycles anymore to Americans. According to this article on Ride Apart, their market is basically 60 years of age and older is who's buying Harley-Davidsons. So you couple just bad sales and not being able to sell the motorcycles like they used to, and some other issues internally with the company and the CEO. And then now you have this cyber attack where a group is claiming that in December they were able to get their hands on about 67,000 customers' personal information when they hacked Harley-Davidson. So the hacking group 888 posted on their dark web link site that they had this information. They have shared some information to prove that they do have it and what they have. Harley-Davidson isn't sure whether they've been hacked or a third-party vendor's been hacked, but this does come on the heels of Volkswagen being hacked. So we'll continue to update you as we learn more. But if you bought a Harley recently, there's a good chance that your information has been stolen, and cyber criminals are trying to negotiate with Harley so it doesn't get released on the dark web. We'll let you know if that does happen or not in an updated video down the road. So that's this week's update, folks. I actually thought it was a fairly busy update for a holiday week as we moved in between Christmas and New Year's here. But I was wrong. It is another big week for cyber criminals and hacking. In the past, this stuff usually slowed down at certain points. It ebbed and flowed. And unfortunately, we've come to a time here in 2025 where just every single day, there's just new reports of different large organizations, cities, states, universities, K through 12 schools, big companies, small companies, making the news getting cyber attacked. But the reality of it is this is called our threat report weekly. And every day I get a threat intelligence report of all the companies that appear on the dark web and that potentially could be getting hacked. And there are hundreds and hundreds of small and medium-sized companies that you never hear of that are on these reports that we get. And it's just not slowing down, unfortunately. So we're here to help you understand the growing problem that is happening to not only businesses, but individuals. And why I say that is because really what's at stake here is your own personal information. That's what these cyber criminals want. That's what has value. That is what they are able to sell on the dark web. They sell it to criminals who like to do things with people's identity and just do really bad things to make people's lives a living hell when they discover that somebody has basically stolen their identity, used their health insurance to, have major surgery. There are all kinds of scams and things that are happening now, and there are ones that we haven't even thought of yet that are coming as a result of all these data breaches. So people need to be prepared and aware that businesses are failing to protect your information. But if you do need help with this stuff, folks, businesses, governments, K through 12 schools, universities, there's links down in the description below. I have a whole course on what your business can do to make sure that your cyber insurance pays, because we're seeing cyber insurance claims denied at a ridiculously rapid pace these days. So check that out and make sure that your investment in cyber insurance doesn't go down the toilet. Watch our free course. Links in the description. Appreciate your support, everyone. Like the video, subscribe to our channel as we head towards 7,000, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe out there.